Hey, it's Chris. Yeah, we're getting into the throes of January, right? If you didn't know, we got over a dozen games to cover this week. What do you need to know about them? Are they right for you? How can I help you make a decision that's right for you on crowdfunding? Where to spend your money? To pledge or not to pledge? Tis the question every Friday. Thanks for tuning in. Let's do this. The nice thing about it, though, when we're doing this, is that I know a bunch of the games this week because I covered 3 of them before the campaign launch. And so the first one up here was not one of those, but this is Hero Realms Dungeons. This is Wise Wizard Games. They're bringing you more, over $250,000, and you're getting some Kickstarter exclusivity. I mean, what are you seeing on the commonality between the most popular projects right now on crowdfunding? There is some exclusivity there. You know, maybe not here, but the 2 most, yeah, so it works, folks. People like that. It motivates them to get it on crowdfunding, FOMO or not. It's a blessing curse. What you're getting with this, though, is you're getting more adventure packs, more characters, as well as a campaign that's cooperative in this deck building game that's been out for years now for Wise Wizard Games. And so you're getting bards, druids, monks, and the Kickstarter exclusive Necromancer. The question just is, do you need it all? Do you need more of it? Here you go. You can see the exclusivity right there. You have an ever-changing market that's going to be where you're going to be buying your main cards from via your currency, and then using those attacks, those powers, those various abilities, depending on the class and depending on the affiliation, to attack your opponent. And in this game, you also have the cooperative expansion, which is giving you more of a campaign. I believe, 12 scenario here, solo co-op. And I believe there's also an additional expansion that they talk about here that's going to add more, a little seafaring one down at the bottom here. They run you through the market decks and the cards that are going to be with the factions that you're familiar with here, all 3 factions. Then they run through some of the characters that you're more familiar with in the adventure packs. The encounters, they talk about how you're going to be going up against one of the bosses here and what's going to be going on and how their actions are going to be determined. And then again, they run you through the tiers of what you're going to be getting down here with the new characters. So if you're familiar with it, you're familiar with it. The adventure deck gives you everything you need to progress, as it says, from the 1st to 24th level. 24 levels is a lot if you're an RPG character. So more Pathfinder than D&D there, if you will. And then they got all the little add-ons down here. For all the characters, here's the Watery Grave expansion that I mentioned. Again, a cooperative deck building adventure expansion with that one. And a lot of the old stuff, if you're familiar with that you can get previously. So that's everything. Lots of add-ons. You can also get all their back products for Star Realms and Sorcerer. So one little preview here of the new one, it looks like. And then the videos are old. So wouldn't mind seeing some more video content of the new stuff. Pledge Manager tier, I'm assuming this is $30 just to get in, which means if I go to the FAQ, is there going to be a no pledge, no get in at this point? Let's see. Let's take a look. Minimum pledge amount. Yes, $30. So remember that video that I did last year that I said people are going to start to do that? Yeah, if you want to get things, you're going to have to get a pledge of at least $30 to get in. So take that for what you will. Divisive. It's going to be interesting, though. $30. Hero Realms Dungeons. Take a look. So we're going to talk about it. You know, you guys were super interested in Gussy Gorillas. I mean, that video is almost breaking triple digits now. To be fair, we're going to give a lot of credit to Zoo Vadis. Zoo Vadis is probably, I'm going to put this out there, this is probably the best game on the market of January crowdfunding so far, because Andromeda's Edge hasn't launched. This is probably going to be second to that, though. And I haven't played Andromeda's Edge, but I really do like Zoo Vadis. It's grown on me more since I played it, since it's been in my head. Gussy Gorillas is a basic card game like Hanabi, where you have the cards facing away from you, and instead of the Hanabi-esque route, you've got cards that you're going to be trying to swap for, and then you get to collect them and do set collections and sort of total up your points. But there's going to be 3 different types of cards that are going to vary what happens with those cards after you collect them: flipping, reversing, and splitting. Because if you get 2 of the same card, they cancel each other out, but you can split them apart and get the bonus. But then reversing is going to cause a negative to go to positive, or a positive go to a negative. And then you have flip, which you literally like rotate the card around and a 2 becomes a 7, right? So that's the gist of it. But Zoo Vadis is a negotiation game, 3 to 7 players here. And it's probably a little bit longer than 20 to 40 minutes, depending on how politicky you are. But I would probably say that 3 is not going to encapsulate it. Again, both of these games are probably going to be best at 4 and 5 based on my experiences and my thoughts on them. I think this is really good. So I would really check this out if you have any interest of it. It's got the nice, unique mechanic of you need to get to this top area of the board, and you're going to be gradually making your way up because there's certain limitations about who can enter and who can exit based on voting. And if you want to bribe people to get votes or negotiate to get their votes to allow you to leave. And then, you know, you can trade favors. The favors that are done on that turn have to be followed through, but favors done for future terms don't have to be guaranteed. And so if you don't get a character or one of your little meeples at the very top, at the end, it doesn't matter how many victory points you pick up between here and there because you're not in the final game scoring. And I really like that. That dynamic, though, is not going to be shared by all. And if you have a group that is, you know, less dynamic, both of these games are probably going to be more easy passes for you. The animals have asymmetric abilities that you could only use on other people or use for other people, which again is a very unique thing. And I really like it. It's something different, but you have to be aware of what you're doing going in that aspect. And so that's going to be the big, okay, check it out. So that's Zoo Vadis. We talked about, there we go, the other game with Gussy Gorillas. And so a lot of Zoo Vadis here. You get down to Gussy Gorillas, and it's just kind of cool. Oh, look, they got mine in there too. I wasn't sure about that because that one came out late. My fault. Mea culpa. And that's not a bad price. The Deluxified is definitely Deluxified. Yeah, Gussy Gorillas is very light. Very light, Hanabi-esque. Zoo Vadis is the one that I would really recommend you check out if you're anything like me and you like that dynamic, but you, again, have to have the dynamic. That's probably going to be the biggest holdup for a lot of people. But, yeah, Bitewing Games, hitting solid already on day one. Check it out. So what do we got up next? We're going to go over to Game Founded. We're going to talk about Batman Escape from Arkham Asylum here for a second. You know, it's got almost $300,000 in the first 24 hours, which is very impressive. Very impressive. But my fear is that it's playing more off the Batman name and the FOMO, because I'm wondering what's going to happen, because after the first 24 hours, you get this drop off, and I'm wondering how much of that's going to happen. 1 to 5 player dungeon crawl, reverse dungeon crawl, if you will, because you're the bad guys trying to escape rather than the good guys trying to knock them out. But we'll talk about that in a second, because I have mixed feelings, because they give one expansion here in the Mastermind Pledge when you pull it up here, and you can't see what they all are, but it is what this one right here, Batman Quest at Arkham Asylum. So like your whole premise is your bad guys escaping, and then you add in an expansion day 1 that's Batman going in there and stopping the bad guys and you playing as Batman. Like that just makes sense to me. Like focus on one way of doing it really, really good. I'm concerned that those things are not going to be equal. The other issue I have with this is right now on day 1, again, day 1, so I'll give them, plenty of time for this. There's no rule book. There's one how to play video that they gave in terms of example of how to play the game they played through. It's like a 2.5 hour video of gameplay. And so that's my big concern, is that there's just not enough info of what separates this, what nuances this. I'm not going to spend 2.5 hours when I can read a rule book in less than 20 minutes of how is this different? What are the dynamics there? What are the unique aspects? And I need to see that, because even with these expansions that you're offering, you've got the Bane guy. I think that was the follow before. And then you've got Nightwing here that's going to come in Blackgate. So expansion, stretch goal. And they've got some cool characters. These miniatures look cool. They've gone heavy comic book, right? Like season 2 or season even 3 from Monolith. You've got Hush, you've got Kite Man, you've got just stuff that is not off the top always. And so that's kind of cool, but they do pledge lock some of the other cool villains in the expansion. And they run through here, the most basic of overviews. You're going to be crafting items, discovering rooms as you go. It's a die rolling dungeon crawl, like I mentioned. Going up as the alert level rises, Batman's going to appear and try and stop you. The how to play video, the gameplay video, this is the 2.5 hour one. Yeah, miniatures painted are cool, but I give no kudos to those, because the same with Simon, right? Like, that doesn't tell me how the game plays. So you get some of your big ones that you're going to know here. And the ones I was kind of more interested in, you get locked here. Again, this is I don't like miniatures on this. This is totally not a good design for gameplay. This is a design for showing off the miniature, not the gameplay elements. But you got Deathstroke, you got Lady Shiva, you got Black Mask and Deadshot in there. So those are cool villains that I kind of wish was in the base game. So we'll see what comes with the expansions and the stretch goals as well. But here's the one that also flips it on its script. Solo mode as Batman. You get one miniature and a bunch of cards and a bunch of cards and a bunch of cards, and it's like 40 euros for that. So that's not insignificant there price point wise. But that's it. That's it on the page. And so for $125 just for the core pledge plus stretch, I gotta see more. I'm not telling you that it's a bad value, but especially when you start having The expansions thrown in here for another 60 euros. I mean, that's not insignificant too. 60 euro difference. Whew, that's a heavy expansion. Reminds me of the one from Steamforge with that. And I don't like seeing expansions cost that much, especially when base core pledge is going to be a much better value content-wise, value-wise in that way. So we'll see where it goes, but it's not luring me in yet at this point. So that's Batman Escape from Arkham Asylum. Now we're going to go over here and we're going to go over Manhattan Project War Machine, the other one I covered this week, which already has $20,000 from Grail Games. And I wasn't sure where this one fell. This is my first Manhattan Project game. Check out my review from earlier in the week. I'll put a little link up above here. But 1 to 4 players, 45 minutes, and it's about 45 minutes. This is probably one of the most complex games, decision-making wise, I've played in the last year and a half. And that's saying something, right? Like if you watched my other videos, you know, I played a couple heavier worker placement games. I did Iki, I did Collab, I did Unconscious Mind, you know, so I did play some things along those lines. And I would say that this was probably more brain burny than even Unconscious Mind. Like even, I was relatively straightforward for me in Unconscious Mind, connecting the dots. This was, even though there's minimal actions necessarily, just more. All you're doing in this game is you're assigning these 3 dice that you're going to be rolling on a turn-by-turn basis. You assign them to get these resources. Resources buy you stuff. You activate stuff and then rinse and repeat. And so what you have is you have this large game board in the center. And with this game board, what you do is you roll and you place them in one of the 3 areas. And those 3 areas are going to get you a little bit of everything. Here's my quote, by the way. I love that they were like completely okay with this quote. I will probably never win this game, and yet I still want to play it more. If that's not an endorsement, I don't know what is, right? Like I'm going to be unabashed now with my quotes. So I like the fact that they put that out there because that's how I feel, right? Like this is a game I suck at. I suck at this game, but it's good because what you're doing is you have those 3 areas, like I mentioned, where you're assigning the resources to build part of your empire. But each of these board areas has like 5 or 10 different spots that you can choose from depending on what side of the die you put down. Then after you get those resources and those actions, you then take those dice and bring them to your own personal board to activate spots in your own personal board. Sounds simple, but it's a lot going on with the options that you were given in both places. And you get to follow actions if other people place certain workers on certain spots. And I love that mechanic because it keeps you engaged as well when it's not your turn. So the fact that this has got $20,000, I'm not surprised. I just didn't know what the pledge point was going to be, and I didn't know, you know, how popular is Manhattan Project. Like, I've always known about it, but I've never played any of the other games, like I mentioned. So, speaking of that, I didn't even look at the pledges. $35. I mean, that's good. That's good. I don't think you're going to find this much cheaper at retail. The only question is, I didn't see any additional things to go with it. So, is it going to have anything else? It doesn't look like it's going to have anything else. It's going to be over 200% funded by the time you guys look at this. So, yeah, maybe you get a group pledge. I mean, group pledge is, you know, not too bad at least. So, yeah, check it out if you want. I mean, better than I was initially expecting. And I'll say that as a very, very positive. I'd be happy to play this game again and lose again. There you go. So, what else we got? Mage Noir. I was looking at this one and I said Mage Noir. Mage Noir, Mage Noir. That's really hard to say 3 or 4 times fast. This was a game that I looked at and I said, I have seen this before. And I have seen this before because I looked at the rulebook and I was like, wow, this really is familiar. And this is the sequel expansion campaign, which is going to give you 6 new expansions, 6, not 3, and a couple more additions of languages that are going to be available. It's a shared mana pool, which is how I recognize this because I remember talking about this mechanic or looking at this mechanic originally at launch. Because if you know my channel, I like these 2-player dueling games, and it's Magic the Gathering vibe. The early bird here is that you're getting double the full art cards or whatever it is. So you're getting 6 new expansions, and they also offer the original stuff that you can get shipped out from whatever the stock they have left over after the campaign ends. The gist of this game is that you have this infinite mana pool in the center of the board, and on your turn you get to select a certain number of mana out of it to make it into the available mana that's shared between you and your opponent. So you divvy it up equally between 2 piles, and then you choose one of the piles to be able to use to play your cards, and all your cards have little values in the upper left hand corner in terms of what you can do. You can create new cards, you can combo new cards, and you can have cards that are worded so that they are a requirement for other more powerful cards later on. And I'll be frank, I wasn't sure about it the first time around, but I think it really seems to have a really solid leg to stand on nowadays, because the combo system of the mana as well as the mana division is not something I've seen recently or since. And they say, okay, look, we're not going straight English. We're going with more of the French roots. And I like this. This gives it a little bit of flair. Flair, if you know what I'm talking about, right? Office Space. Anyway, with just some of the naming. And I like that. They've got some new keywords here in each of the expansions as well. And it's a mix and match depending on how you want to do it. The only question was going to be price point. You can see down here, the core game is going to be about $40. The expansions are going to be a little pricier though. You're going to go all the way up to about another $25 or so, which isn't horrible for expansions. The new stuff though, 6 expansions for $80. Again, it's about $12 an expansion. Not bad, but still a lot. And all of it's $150. And that's a lot to spend for this type of game, unless you're in love with it. So that'd be my biggest concern. You can get the old stuff, you can get the solo and the co-op expansion. I wonder how this plays as a co-op game, because I don't see a lot of information on the page, but it goes through some of the exclusives and a few videos down here, and the full art cards that you're going to be getting double of if you're an early backer, and playmats even. So yeah, there you go. A couple of videos at the bottom. I mean, this looks solid. This is another sleeper hit of the week, I'd say. Definitely give it a check out and a look-see. Speaking of sleeper hits, though, well, this is Mage Noir, but now we're going to go to my previous pre-campaign launch sleeper pick of the week on the upcoming video from last week, and this is Roll for the Great Old Ones, and I stand by that because, it's funded. It's a roll and write Cthulhu Arkham Horror-esque, right? Like a roll and write Arkham Horror 3rd edition. That's essentially what this is. The only thing I'm a little concerned about is the numbers on the die, based on my very superficial glance and read through of the rulebook, seem less important than I was expecting. And you'll see what I mean in a second when I start showing you some of the cards, because the basic gist of it is you have this asymmetric investigator that you're playing with up to 4 people, anywhere from 1 to 4. And you have asymmetric amount of health and asymmetric abilities, as well as action squares that you're slowly marking off with these numbers of the dice that you do. And so on your turn, you roll 3 dice, a d12 and a d6, and you pick one of the dice for yourself. And then the other 2 dice make up the bad event, the pandemic-esque bad event that happens on that turn. And you get a scenario, and sometimes you'll know what's going to be going. And so sometimes you can choose to reroll, which may cost you insanity or may cost you health. You have individual actions as well as skills that you're going to be upgrading. And you have experience that's going to help you along the way. And as you're crossing out these boxes, you're going to be able to cross out more boxes, get more numbers, as well as just get more skills, like I mentioned, to help mitigate things in a better way. They run you through the 4 scenarios that you're going to be doing here. There's 3 main objectives in every single scenario that they talk about. The ritual can't be completed. Investigators must close the dark seal, and somebody has to survive, right? Somebody's got to survive. I mean, it's one of those. And it's cooperative roll and write, and it's relatively straightforward. You start crossing off these boxes that I mentioned, get a free number, get an experience point. But the die numbers, and this is where I was a little bit, I'm not sure if I'm just misreading it or I just didn't clearly get the depth. The die numbers matter more for the scenario of the bad guy stuff that's going to happen, rather than necessarily when you're filling out your actions or your boxes here. You may have strengths and weaknesses, because the example that they use in the very explicit detailed example that they give on the page, if you click on it, is like, okay, well, the insanity of the investigators increased by 1 because she chose an even number die, and that's her weakness. So that's the sort of thing that matters more. Here's the full turn if you want to click that. It's very detailed. I mean, it's smooth. It understands how things go just by reading through it. And it's going to matter more of this right here, as I think is more of the question, is how much of this is variable and dependent on the numbers with the skills, the free numbers, and those aspects. So, I mean, right? I can't really complain a whole lot. It seems solid. It seems very straightforward. I am going to be very tempted not to get the printed one, but to get my print and play. So, I mean, even the printed one, though, is only like $25. So that's not expensive. And so this one is heavily on my radar. Remind me, this one is going to go down to the wire for me, but I'm probably going to end up backing the print and play version of it, because then you can just laminate it and, play it again. So there you go. Roll for the great ones. Do it. Now, next up, we have Wiz War, the 9th edition, Stephen Jackson Games. I am, personally speaking, again, not as familiar with the Wiz War tradition of how many editions before this. Having looked over this page, though, and having say, you know what, this is a new edition, we're bringing the new with the old, and swapping sectors, that's basically all we know that's new here. This one right here. Swap sectors. No 2 game is the same. They've got old quotes from, I don't even know when these quotes are from, but I don't think they're recent. But that's all that's on the page. They talk about a few of their other games, and that's it. So the fact that they're getting $42,000 based off of name recognition alone is great. I mean, you've got $30 for the game here, which again is not horrible whatsoever. There's only a limited pledge and international. And if you wanted to get the greed game, whatever that one is too, I'm not covering that one at all. But there appears to be quite the interest in some of these other games too, especially all three. So, I mean, I wish there was more information on the page. This is kind of a bleh page. Like if you're not familiar with Wiz War, like I'm not intrigued or enthralled by this page. Nothing is going to grab me. So I feel like this is a minimum effort involved page, and it shows. I mean, you're getting $40,000 based off of that, but could you have gotten 100,000? You put some more out there, take that for what you will. Next up, going back to GameFound here, we have Witchbound, which $40,000 on day one as well of the $15,000 goal. This is the solo game that I talked about last week as a open narrative style game, sort of myth-esque, you know, not myth like what you're familiar with, but like old school myth PC game, that style, because you have a 50 different scenario driven adventure that's open world and available with 30 plus hours of content, they say. With this picture, for example, you have the numbered options that are going to be available to you, the bubbles, as well as the locations, as well as even some hidden stuff within the pictures as well. And, you know, it's an indie game, like they say. $40 for the base game, the stretch goals, and then $80 for these add-ons. Not a big fan of this pledge because it's a journal. It's a journal that you can write stuff in. It's not special, it's just a journal. And then this one I'm really not a big fan of either. It's fine, but I'm not a huge fan of it in video games, and I'm not a huge fan of it in board games either. It's basically DLC, downloadable content later. They're giving you extra season story expansion content when it comes out later at that point. So, I mean, it's fine. Doesn't entice me though. Hopefully it entices other people as well. And then they offer some tokens in addition to like a little bit of a lore compendium book. So it's fine. I wish there was a little bit more on the page, but that's about it. I mean, with this game, I mean, without watching one of the videos, you're probably not going to be able to get too much information without spoiling it. But they run you through where the different scenes are and on the location of the island. And then they have a few quotes and a few videos here that you can check it out. It's like a slightly different version of Lands of Galzier, if you will, but mainly solo driven. They talk about the different points of interest and the locations on the maps that you're going to be interacting with, combining the numbers, as well as using the numbers. This is a little bit of a role player adventure system to combine them to use them on actions and items. And that's it. That's all that's on there. They talk about everything else down here at the bottom that you need to know in terms of shipping and prices. So yeah, Witchbound. I mean, it's killing it. This is clearly a niche in a market, combination of the open world narrative campaign games, now with a solo only session, now with a solo only edition. So take that for what you will. There you go. Witchbound. Trolls and Princesses. Game Brewer. Again, like this is not insignificant. Overfunded already on day one. $5,000 over. Trolls and Princesses. As you're trying to be a better troll and, you know, capture more princesses as you go along in this worker placement style of game. And it's definitely a little bit heavier. It's definitely going to be something different. And the actions, they say, are relatively straightforward, but it still is falling under the medium to heavy Euro campaign. Standard edition, deluxe edition, everything else you'd expect from a deluxe Euro on crowdfunding. What do you need to know about the game, though? How are you actually playing? So the concept itself is relatively simple, and this is where the action selection and the complexity is going to really vary. All you're doing on your turn is you're preparing to move your trolls from one space to the other. And you're moving the Troll King around on a turn-by-turn basis at the beginning, sort of like El Grande, if you will. And then what you're doing is all you're moving is one troll off of your board onto a cave in your player board, or onto one of the, I think, 6 main areas or so on the main board. And it has to have an empty spot there. But how many actions you get at that spot are highly dependent on how many other trolls are in the area that you move to. And so if you move to an area with more of them, you're going to get more action points to spend at these locations. You do that twice per round. And then you play 10 to 12 rounds depending on the number of players, and whoever has the most at the end wins. This is where the other tricky point or the complexity comes in. Within all of these spots, you have a lot of different cave actions that you can take. Mining, building, gaining power, getting cards, refreshing displays, activating the king tiles. Going into the village now, you have a whole different set of 6 actions. Stealing cows, hiring humans, performing castle actions, capturing princesses, swapping babies with changelings, or hiding a church bell. So, I mean, that's a lot of different stuff in one simple action of what you're doing and how you're mitigating or how you're designing your strategy to work. All the stuff, the comparative here of what's the deluxe and what's the not the deluxe, a bunch of videos, and just a little bit of background. So what is the price point again? 55 and 75? Take it for what you will. I think, again, I didn't see here with Game Brewer was, why should I get anything above the 55 now? If you're looking at this, it's a lot of deluxeifications. And I don't know if that's going to be worth it later. A few add-ons here as well. Magnetic storage boxes, sleeve system. Yeah, I mean, usually on crowdfunding, you go deluxe or you go home. I don't see anything on this so far that deluxeifies it to make me think, okay, you need to get it here, or it's going to be significantly better or different. But you know what? Your mileage may vary. Check it out if you want to. Trolls and Princesses. Next up, we have the relaunch of Deep Shelf, a little bit of a worker placement, a little heavier game. This is interesting because it's by the makers of Dinogenics. Why am I bringing that up? Well, in the first week, if you're backing, they give you a mini expansion crossover here for free. So that's kind of interesting. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, it's interesting, but how much crossover you're getting from their other game and how many people are really interested in this one. That's sort of what I wonder, at least, as me, doing this. Anyway, what do you need to know about this game as a worker placement? Well, what you're doing is you're basically mining the bottom of the sea, and you're doing it in a way to sort of exploit the resources in the most rapid fashion possible, but at the same time, not overdoing it and causing destruction too soon, because that's one of the end game conditions is when you reach, as they say here, exploration, critical point of no return, or you reach the end of the science tracks. And so it runs it through, and on every turn you get 2 different actions that you get to take, and you're slotting these cards into sort of a grid that you have in front of you, first slot, second slot, and then they get bumped over slots as you play them, and so then they make their way out so that you can't use either of those cards until you've played other ones, sort of to cycle through your actions. You have 6 cards in your hand, with the 7th available action going to be like your superstructure asymmetric faction ability that you can unlock. And it runs you through all the things you're doing here: extracting, processing, constructing, scouting, building your home base, science tracks. You have 2 different modes: 2 to 4 competitive or 1 to 2 player campaign. Branching game? Worker placement? I don't know. I worry about that being a little bit too spread thin, but clearly they're comfortable with it. So it's on Tabletop Simulator. A little bit heavier worker placement deluxeified here. Going to be $78 for the core pledge with screen printed meeples. $99 gets you some extra unlocks here with the sleeves and the coins. So just what you'd expect, I guess. Take that for what you will. If you want to get the Dinogenics crossover as well later, it's $6. Funding goal, they've hit some stretches here as well with some deluxeifications. Plenty of reviews, plenty of everything you need to know, and that's about it. Shipping is going to be whatever, and it's doing well second time around. So I give them a lot of kudos for sticking with it and putting these little GIFs on the page and really showing off what it can do here. So there you go. I'm talking about this one because I covered it the first time around. I have a game in my collection still. This is Bossa. Very chic Japanese game of numbers and tiles. And all you're doing with this game is you have this row of tiles with 3 special action tiles that you can use once a game. And you're either the white pips or the black pips on these numbered tiles. And you choose whichever color you're going to be. Your opponent is the opposite. And you basically have to create a straight of certain length. I can't remember if it's between 5 and 7. And basically what you have is you have to have like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of rows of pips of your color on those. And so the other tricky point is on every single number, you have to have 1 more or 1 less tile. So if you have put down a 3 of black pips in front of you, you can either put a 2 on one side of it or a 4 on the other side total, but you're going to have to use potentially 2 tiles to get one of those totals, if that makes sense. The rules are relatively straightforward. They give you an example here where you can see 1 white. They do the blacks: 1 white, 2 whites, or 2 blacks, 3 blacks, 4 blacks. So they run through what you're going to be doing. You can either do the same, 1 higher or 1 lower here. They give you an example right here, and you can see which of the white dots or black dots are in use, and then how many are going to be on each and what the total would be and how they're going to be able to line up. And so, yeah, it's just a new edition of it and a little expansion to go with it. It's a Japanese game. I haven't seen it on the secondary market. I haven't seen it on the, distributor side of things. And so if you want something that's little light and just works well, go get it. Still in my collection for a reason. So have I played it much since the last campaign? No, honestly, I haven't. But it's easy enough to get to the table. It's easy enough concept that I can explain to my kids even, that it's just quality and it's solid. So I want to cover it again when it came out again. So Bossa, check it out. Next up, Rising Storm. About 50% funded. This one just launched. This is a card game, and this is going to be a open drafting faction asymmetric. Play your cards head to head, win the best of 3 tricks, playing 4 cards each trick that are going to have factions that are either going to cancel each other out or addition or add additions to whatever you're playing in sort of a paper, scissors, rock sort of way, only with more text, more bonus actions or bonus powers with that as you're going through. The only problem is they've only got a couple of videos here, including the Kickstarter linked ones, which are always not great in terms of watching them at a higher speed or clicking through them to get a little bit of what it is, how it looks, and how it plays. There's no rule book on here yet, but there's a few add-ons that you can get down here, and then a few video reviews down here as well. So I wish there was a little more on the page. I mean, it's doing actually surprisingly well for how much is actually on the page there. It's actually doing surprisingly well for what's on the page. So will it fund? No idea, but I thought I'd just mention it. Rising Storm. There you go. Next up, we have Four Corners. This is a little bit more of an abstracty style game where you're tile laying and manipulating them. And what I mean by that is, by the GIF here, you can see that you're going to be rotating them. Now, you rotate them 90 degrees, or you have the ability to swap tiles, or you have a special action, or you're just laying a tile down. And in order to score points, what you're doing is you're trying to get those corners, as you can see in the center of this GIF, to match up to make the symbol. That's one way to score. Then you can also score if you have the center of those symbols lined up as well. And you can see down here, the placement, the rotation, the swapping, or the special actions, like I mentioned. You can score the center of it, or you can score in a row going across there. But the tricky point is that after you make that score, you actually have to disassemble it before the next person's turn. So not only can they not manipulate it based on what they're seeing at the end of your turn or the end of your score, they're actually giving you the ability to score again, because you have to rotate these all by like 90 degrees in one way. And so you can match up other ones by rotating this one. So that's what you're gonna see with this, which makes me think that the actions of this game are relatively simple, but there could be a lot of AP, and that would be my biggest concern with this. I love the concept of it. I'm a big abstract lover, but the AP that I could see being enhanced or significantly involved with this would definitely be there for someone like my wife, where I'm just going to take the first thing. But, some of us are going to want to sit there and analyze, okay, if I do this one and then I break it apart this way and then I twist it that way, and yeah, that's where you could really get in trouble. I mean, it's a great concept, though. I have no qualms about saying that this one's probably going to fund. And $12 plus what's the pledge level? Retail buy-in, $32. Yeah, that's probably what it'll be about at retail. So I'd say it's probably a break even. Is it a great value? Probably no. Is it a good value? Yeah, I'd say so. Now, both sets, the Galaxy and the Kaleidoscope, you can basically just get whichever version you want. So take that for what you will. Not necessarily as big a fan of offering 2 different colored versions, but I guess if there's a market for it, right? Take advantage. Now, going back over to GameFound, we have Scrap from Jolly Swagman Games, and this one's about 50% funded as well. And this is more of an area control functionality programming game, if you will. And so you've got your asymmetric factions, and what you're going to be doing with these is you're going to be, again, sort of with Deep Shelf, you're going to be upgrading your tech tree as you're going along. But it has a little bit more of a mechs versus minions vibe as you're doing this, because you have 3 basic phases of actions, or phases of your turn, I guess I should say, of how you're doing this. And the first one is the call phase, the action phase. So you're taking your things that are queued up and you're playing them in your programmed manner. The second is you're upgrading. And what I mean by upgrading is there's going to be these different tracks that you're adjacent to in terms of what your specialization is per turn. Here we go. The focus of your knowledge. And so these domains, you're going to have one chosen per turn, but then you have to choose one of the ones adjacent on a subsequent turn or the next turn before you can then play your cue that is going to be available at the beginning of your next turn as your first part of your turn, like I just mentioned. And so these are going to have different strengths, different weaknesses, different asymmetric utilizations. And then you're going to advance any remaining things that you have and go forward from there. So there's a lot of then, okay, at the end of my turn, phase 3 is when I'm doing the planning for the initial part of phase 1 the next time it comes around for me. So that's the tricky part of the planning, where there's going to be other turns in between your 3 and your 1, like I mentioned there. So, yeah. There you go. So what is 125 Australian, 84 US dollars? That's more expensive than I was expecting for this game. It looks like it's got some deluxeifications though. You know, it's definitely an indie project. So you're definitely not going to see it widely available. It's just a question of, I think you got to watch some gameplay. The rulebook didn't give me the best sense of the flow, so you may actually have to watch a video for this one if you're looking for something different involving more of an area control as well as action programming. But definitely a unique combination, and I like the wooden meeples. Good choice there. Scrap. There you go. So not too bad this week. Round up a dozen plus games, talking about them all that you need to know. Tomorrow's video, we're going to mainly be highlighting the top ones that are launching next week, and there's going to be a lot of Andromeda's Edge talk. So if you're watching the end of this video and you want to know more about Andromeda's Edge, I'm not your guy because I don't have one of those copies. The rest of those reviews and preview videos are already popping out right now. I am not large enough to have one of those someday. Someday, hashtag. But yeah, I'm following it, and that's probably going to be the only other instant back for me this month besides Marvel United. The rest are, you know, there's a couple other close ones. And February, we'll have the video out, I think, on Sunday for the big ones of February to know, because there's 3 or 4, 2 of which I have in my collection, and I'll be having videos hopefully out in the next week or so as well for spoilers. And, you know, it's the end of January. I know I haven't done my top list of 2022. That's a more involved video, though, because I'm going to break it down into 2 videos, I think. 20 to 11, 10 to 1. And I want to make it enthralling, entailing. I don't know how to make it enthralling. I'm not that entertaining. Don't listen to me. It's going to be good, though. It's going to be good. There's lots of good games, and there's going to be games that other people have mentioned. There's going to be plenty of games that other people didn't mention. So take that for what you will. That's all I got. Done ramble over. Nothing. Working this weekend. Stay classy. See you around. Play something fun. Or not. Just have a good time this weekend. We're getting snow right now. My oldest wanted snow on his birthday. His birthday's next month. And he's like, I hope we have snow. And I'm like, well, now we will. Because, you know, they get a snow day, right? Like, there's no snow days with work when you're an adult. So, you know what I'm talking about. Or maybe not. Maybe you're in warm weather and you never have to deal with snow. But it's the way of life around here. I'm done ramble over.